Okay, so for most of the week, I will be going over Dark Eldar. I have the second edition copy somewhere, but if you watched one of my previous videos, I can't find it. So I'll try to, but there's not very many changes, and I know them all, so. Alright, so going ahead with Dark Eldar. There's a few things you should know. If you are just now starting Dark Eldar, definitely still get the codex, get some of the models, play them out, start to get the hang for them, but they should be coming out with the new release of Dark Eldar either late this year or early next year, which is fantastic because, in case you were wondering when this was made, I don't know if you can read that, but this was released in 1998, the same year I started playing Warhammer. So it's been a while. It's essentially a 2nd/3rd edition codex being played in 5th edition rules. So there's lots of things that that you need to know if you're going to play this edition before the new one comes out. So Dark Eldar as an army is pretty much the sick and twisted, demented side of the Eldar. So they have good technology, fast skimmers. They have some specialized units, that kind of stuff, just like the Eldar do. The Dark Eldar as a whole specialize in close combat, and they specialize pretty much with close combat and amazing firepower. They are fragile as all hell, so you got to keep them protected, and you have to be aggressive. If you're not aggressive with the Dark Eldar, you will die, and that's simply how it goes. There's really, at least since 3rd edition or 4th edition, there is no effective way to do a Dark Eldar gunline army without getting completely and utterly ripped apart. So you can do a hybrid list, but for the most part, you can't do a gunline. You need to do an aggressive list. If you don't like using vehicles and transports and skimmers and lots and lots of insane weapons flying around at the very, very high likely chance that the squad's going to be blown to pieces, then I would not pick up the Dark Eldar. If you like orcs, the chaoticness, the like how fragile their vehicles they are, that kind of stuff, but you would like ones with a little bit better shooting, ones with a slightly more organization, and ones with better weapons, then I would definitely consider the Dark Eldar. Let me go through the codex with you, through all of the unit choices. There is the Dark Eldar Lord. This is my converted Dark Eldar Lord. I made him just from a normal warrior. I made him a cape and all this sweet stuff, and my friend James on here made me this awesome medicine bottle for his combat drugs. And he's carrying a head with a knife coming out of it, so I just have to paint the head still. The Dark Eldar Lord is pimp. If you need some badass guy to lead your army and slice apart everybody, you get a Dark Eldar Lord, an Archon. You can only have one Archon in your army, though. But you can have as many Dracons as you want, which is basically just a step below the Archons. Dark Eldar Lords are awesome. They can take a retinue. I'll go through each unit more in individual videos, but his retinue is Incubi and Warriors. Incubi are awesome. Warriors are kind of standard. Homunculi, I don't really see much use for them. Let me go through the codex really quick, and I'll tell you what not to use, because since the editions have changed, many things are worthless. So starting in the front, let's just do this quickly. Homunculi, trash. Don't bother with them. Just pretend their unit doesn't exist. Grotesques. You can find ways to use grotesques, but it's overly complicated and not as effective as not using grotesques. So grotesques, trash. Just take them out of your codex entirely. The mandrakes, garbage. Just take them out. Wipe them out of your fracking codex if you need to. Witches are good. War beasts, not so much. They can be used effectively. Maybe white out half of their unit, and consider using them every now and then. Warrior squads and Raider squads are going to be the bulk of your army. Those are really what you need. Reaver jet bikes, again, you can build an army around using them, a witch cult army, that kind of stuff, but in general, don't bother with them. They're one of the few units that is kind of teetering on the edge. You can use them in pretty much every game of the Dark Eldar and use them effectively, but most of the time it's not worth it. The Hellions. If you're gonna cross anything out of your Fething Codex, cross out the Hellions. They are complete garbage and for too many points. The rules editions changing has just slaughtered them. And the Scourge, their weapons and that are way, way, way too expensive, and they're still super fragile. I have some converted ones that I use very, very rarely. So in general, don't take them, but if you need some points, you have a bunch of points left over, you need some good anti-infantry, something like that, then maybe consider taking Scourge, but in general, they're garbage. Just too many points. Ravager is another one that you want to keep on your good list of things to use in your Dark Eldar army. And the Talos, in my opinion, has lost a lot of its usefulness since a static gun line, or even a decently hybrid Dark Eldar list has become obsolete. So just the fact that it can only move 6 inches and run 6 inches, if you're playing Dark Eldar correctly, it can't keep up. So in general, the Talos is not worth taking. It can be used effectively with things like warp gates and that kind of stuff, which I'll go through, portals, which I'll go through in another video. So again, to review, Homunculi, garbage. Grotesque, garbage. Mandrakes, garbage. Reaver jet bikes, Warp beasts, Hellions, complete and utter fething trash. Do not even look at their entry. And the Scourge are just way too many points, and the Talos usually is not very usable. So the things you're going to be using in pretty much your army every single time is Dark Eldar Lord, his retinue with Incubi, Witches, and Warriors, and Ravagers. Those are pretty much going to be your entire army until the new Codex comes out. It's unfortunate, but it's really the only list you can play with any hope of success. So if you're taking any of the units that I listed as complete trash and garbage, unless you are a very good Dark Eldar player, and you can tactically use them very, very well, you're basically throwing points away and giving yourself a handicap. So you don't want that with Dark Eldar, especially if you're just starting out. Don't get discouraged. I probably lost every game with my Dark Eldar for the first year and a half. But Dark Eldar, because of the rules changes and the editions changes, have become a ridiculous army if you know how to command them and control them. For example, the time, I specifically remember the time that I learned how to use Dark Eldar, because previous to that, it was a struggle to even have something left on the table at the end of the game. Once I really figured it out, the very next game, I was destroying my opponents. Immediately after I figured it out, in a 2,000-point game, I killed 4.5 Carnifex in one turn. The Dark Eldar Lord single-handedly killed one in combat before his retinue got to fight. These things are beasts. You just have to know how to use them. Another example, I was playing a good friend of mine, his Necrons, and I must have gotten him down from, I think, 2,000 to 750, 500 points, something like that, before his first turn. He conceded before he got to move once in the game. Dark Eldar is probably the only army in the game where I would say tabling your opponent is a valid tactic in many cases. So instead of trying to capture objectives, the Dark Eldar can just run around and attempt to destroy every single thing on the table in order to get victory. So the Dark Eldar are very, very powerful, and they have lots and lots of anti-vehicle, anti-infantry weapons. Just keep in mind that they are fragile as all hell, and they need to be used very carefully. That being said, very aggressively too. So thank you for watching. It's kind of an overview of the Dark Eldar Army, and I'm going to go ahead and straight into the tactic videos.